Decided tickets will go on sale as usual on Friday.
"350 buckets of cement, each weighing 20 tons, are lifted into the main dam wall every 24 hours. The proportions used in mixing the cement have to be decided on scientifically, as local climatic conditions affect the drying rate. Get it wrong and disaster threatens. It takes 5 minutes to swing each giant bucket across the void to the top of the dam. Once there, it will be tipped into a preformed casing where it hardens into a block. One small piece of the dam falls into place. On this site, women as well as men are employed in some of the most skilled jobs, including crane operating. These are amongst the tallest cranes in the world. One crane is as high as the Victoria Falls in Africa. Operators have to take an elevator and then climb 400 feet just to get to work every day. As the operator swings the vast bucket of concrete, engineers below indicate the exact spot where it should be poured.
Can you tell me something about yourself?
Yes, my name is Fang Zhihui. I'm just over 40 years old.
How long have you been doing this job?
I started operating a crane in 1978. Since September last year, we've been operating right up here at this height. It's much higher than before, but it honestly doesn't scare me too much, the extra height. To tell you the truth, once you get used to heights, the extra weight doesn't count. It's all the same to me. Just a moment. I have to give it my full attention. It's really complicated up here. There are other cranes around, and you have to be very careful to avoid collisions.
Like most of her co-workers, Feng Caihui and her family are committed to living amid the noise and dirt of the construction site for the next 10 years. Alongside the dam site, a city of the future is being built to house the people who will maintain the dam when it's finished. There will be great cause for celebration if the dam is a success. The dam truly is taking shape in the heart of China. Immediately above the dam lie the three gorges that have given the dam its name. The three little gorges on one of the Yangtze's tributaries, the Danning River, were formed by movement of the Earth's crust some 40 million years ago. The Danning flows into the Yangtze, but while the water of the tributaries remains sweet and clear, the main Yangtze is one of the most polluted waterways on the planet. Coal is used to create 75% of China's energy. China is the world's largest producer and consumer of coal. Carbon emissions are damaging the environment. The Three Gorges area of the Yangtze, from Chongqing in the west to Wuhan in the east, is the heart of industrial China. Factories in the area generate a high level of acid rain that covers an area the size of Japan. China's leading cause of death is heart disease, helped by the burning of coal from steel smelters and rolling mills. Many such factories are on the banks of the river Yangtze. Dam Director Liu hopes that clean power generated by the hydroelectric plant at the dam will help to reduce this terrible toll.
Because of the reservoir that will be created behind the dam, the Yangtze will contain a lot more water, so providing for the generation of 18.2 million kilowatts of electricity.
It will be the largest power plant in the world, capable of supplying all the power needed by a city 4 times the size of Los Angeles. This vast hole will be the site of one of the power stations. Solid granite had to be blasted to make way for its foundations. By the time the dam is complete, over 78 million cubic yards of rock will have been shifted in this mammoth drill and blast operation. It is hoped that selling the power generated by the dam will both fuel China's boom and help the dam pay for itself. The way power is generated by a dam is explained by Daniel Beard.
Hydropower is electric power generated using the energy of falling water. There's only one law that you need to generate power, and that's the law of gravity. As long as we don't repeal gravity, water's going to flow downhill, and as it flows downhill, we capture it, divert it through a tunnel, and run it through a turbine, and as the turbine spins, it creates electricity. It can be an inexpensive way of generating power if you look just at the cost of the turbine, but it also is expensive when you look at the impact that a dam may have on the community or the environment.
Every year, the Yangtze carries not just people, but also millions of tons of cargo. But soon, a 610-foot wall will block the river. How will all the shipping traffic cross the dam? The answer is not revolutionary in concept, but it is in scale. Here, the foundations of a ship elevator are being constructed. The elevator will be a vast steel box driven by a mechanism strong enough to lift the box with a 3,000-ton ship inside. The box will contain 13 feet of water, enough to keep a ship balanced. The whole mechanism will raise a ship the height of the dam in just 42 minutes. The elevator in the center of the picture will be very fast, but it will be very expensive to use and only smaller ships will fit in. So most of the river's traffic will use the second mechanism, one of the world's largest system of locks. The 5-level lock will enable 10,000-ton barges to cross the 610-foot barrier of the dam. That's like moving the Titanic over the Statue of Liberty in just 3 hours. The reservoir behind the dam will be much deeper than the river is now. This will mean that ocean-going vessels will be able to carry goods directly between San Francisco and Chongqing, which is 1,500 miles from the sea. An acceleration in the pace of the regeneration of central China will follow. It's estimated that the volume of shipping here will increase 5-fold, and that will mean a lot more money in a lot more pockets. Chongqing is already a sprawling area of 30 million people. That's equal to the entire population of California. When the dam is finished, it looks set to become a new Hong Kong, a city where business is everything. Although Chongqing is 370 miles upstream from the dam site, Much of the old city will disappear to make way for a new, deeper port for the vast ships that will dock here. These mahjong players would be 50 feet underwater. In this wartime capital of China, everywhere the old is being replaced by the new. Within 10 years, very little of the original Chongqing will remain. This man, Mr. Zhang Jiyan, must leave his family home for an apartment in the modern city. His home will be demolished tomorrow, so he paints a picture to help him remember. But as some parts of the city are cut away, the rest of the boomtown continues to grow. Such is the pace of change in Chongqing that people say if you turn your back even for a minute, a new building will already have risen when you look around. But can this building boom prevent a human tragedy of gigantic proportions? When the Three Gorges Dam is completed, the water level will rise behind it to over 500 feet, creating a reservoir nearly 400 miles long where once there were thriving river communities. The biggest worry for all those involved is not the technical challenge, but the fate of the million or so people who live along the shores of the Yangtze between the dam and Chongqing. All these communities along the riverbanks will have to be moved.
The biggest problem is resettlement of people who live in the reservoir area. With the Three Gorges Dam, we can protect the people in the lower reaches, some 15 million people. But it will cause problems for the people in the upper reaches, which will be submerged. Currently, that is about 840,000 people. By the time the dam is completed, by natural increase, this will have become 1.13 million.
But experts disagree about the number of people who will have to be resettled. Daniel Beard, once President Clinton's advisor on dams, thinks that figure has been seriously underestimated.
I asked the Chinese when I was there, I said, what's the largest number of people you've ever moved for a dam project in your history? And they said 250,000 people in the 1960s. And my assumption was that at that time they were done at the end of a bayonet. Well, now you have a much different country, you have a much different China, and you're going to move 2 million people?
Crossing time zones, climates and languages to explore.
The water will start to rise once the river is blocked off in the year 2004, and the reservoir will be full in the year 2009. 4,000 villages, 140 towns, 13 cities, and 100,000 acres of farmland will be inundated. The reservoir will be longer than the Grand Canyon. This is 2,000-year-old Fangdu, 250 miles upstream from the dam. It's known as the City of Ghosts because its temples are dedicated to the gods of the underworld. The town will vanish below the new reservoir's waterline. All that will remain will be the ghost temple at the top of the hill. When the 65,000 inhabitants have been evacuated, Fangdu must be destroyed to prevent submerged buildings becoming a hazard to shipping. Further upstream is the city of Fuling, with a population of 79,000. On one of the main shopping streets, a sign indicates how high the reservoir's waters will be when the dam is completed. It serves as a constant reminder to the people that not much of their city will survive for long. Within 2 years, they will be relocated to New Fuling, a new town being built higher in the hills. It is typical of the cities of New China, changing fast as the whole country develops as a world power. 13 modern cities like this are to be swept away, and all their residents moved. These men and women will have to relocate the businesses they've worked so hard to build up. The problems of moving this many people are considered by many insurmountable. The people whose lives will change most will not be the city dwellers, but those who live along the fertile banks of the Yangtze. Away from the noise and pollution of the industrial areas of the Yangtze, an ancient way of life survives. Yungyang Old Town is one of 4,000 doomed hill villages that are scarcely touched by the modern world. The women spin yarn, as has been done for centuries. A kind of rural community that no longer truly exists in the Western world. The miller grinds winter corn and summer rice for his neighbors on the same millstones that his grandfather and great-grandfather used before him. Housewives use the traditional wok for cooking. The village is almost self-sufficient, producing its own food, making its own clothes. The streets have never heard the sound of motorized traffic. It's a unique way of life. Through self-sufficiency, this village has survived centuries of turmoil. This is where the ancestors have been worshipped for generations. This is where the ancient village tree has stood for centuries. This is the time-hallowed ground that now has to be abandoned forever. The miller and his wife are in the process of moving to Yungyang New Town, 500 yards up the hill. Here they will have to start again, without any reminders of their past. New luxuries like running water are welcome, but many people complain that they will miss the sense of community they once enjoyed in their ancient villages. Signs indicating the height of the dam pepper the Three Gorges area. Everything below this bridge will be underwater. Even the top of the bridge itself will be below the waterline when the dam is complete and the reservoir full. Close by, Daqiang will be completely underwater. When the reservoir is filled, thousands in towns like this will have to be relocated. This town has existed for 2,000 years. Last rebuilt in the 15th century, it's one of China's best preserved ancient towns. People here rarely leave the village and surrounding fields. It has always been a close and happy community, but now people are worried about their future. This is the true heart of China, a traditional way of life that has survived war, revolution, and famine. It's hard for people who live like this to accept that within... This has produced a torrent of criticism in China, a land of newly acquired freedoms.
We do not respond to political criticism. China needs this project economically and also to prevent natural disasters. In the final analysis, the Three Gorges project is between man and nature. And we can only use scientific methods to solve the problems.
But out on the cutting edge, solving problems isn't always easy. And if they were to make a mistake, the consequences wouldn't bear thinking about.
Every engineer who's in the dam building business is concerned about dam safety, and they take it very seriously because they know the consequences are very great. It's a very high-risk venture. In the United States, we had a very large dam failure in the 1970s. The Teton Dam in Idaho was constructed, they began to fill it, and as they filled it, it gave way, and people were killed, and millions of dollars worth of damage were incurred.
On the dam, we have sluice gates to lower the level inside the reservoir, which is more than enough to eliminate the risk of flood disaster. The biggest flow in the Yangtze in flood has been around 70,000 cubic meters this century. But my design allows for 110,000, and we have allowed a safety margin above that. At that, you can be absolutely sure this dam is safe.
Even if the dam is safe, some ecologists and engineers point to another problem: how to deal with silt. Silt is fine particles. In a fast-flowing river, it provides valuable nutrients to the soil as it flows out to the sea. But when it flows into a still body of water, it can build up dangerously. Chinese engineers say the silt will be periodically flushed out through special gates in the dam. For smaller reservoirs, this is standard. But if this isn't possible for the vast Three Gorges Reservoir, there is a real danger of buildup which could have enormous implications for shipping and flood control along the Yangtze. Canadian dam expert Grayanne Ryder explains her concerns about the removal of silt from a reservoir so large.
The problem, though, is the Three Gorges Reservoir is going to be the length of Lake Superior. And most of the silt is going to start piling up at the furthermost end of the reservoir. So up where the towns are hundreds of kilometers upstream, they're going to have silt starting to build up. When the silt starts to pile up at the upper end of the reservoir, there's very little that the dam operators can do with that problem. And people have predicted that this is going to create a huge flooding problem upstream. So floods are going to occur more frequently upstream than they did in the past.
But there could be an even more terrifying risk than huge floods. Very large dams have been known to trigger earthquakes because of their weight pressing down on the Earth's crust. Earthquakes created these mountains millions of years ago, and earthquakes could strike again tomorrow, as Patricia Adams knows only too well.
The reservoir area is straddling a fault line, so there is a real chance that the underlying foundation of the dam underneath the reservoir is not as stable as the engineers are hoping and assuming. If the dam failed, there would be a massive tidal wave that would move down the Yangtze, and it would lead to the death of, I would estimate, millions, and it would certainly lead to the destruction of billions of dollars worth of assets, and to the long-term disability of the country.
But the Chinese are sure that the risks have been thoroughly calculated, and they are well on their way in this amazing effort to tame Mother Nature. This building project today is historically unprecedented. It will be one of the few man-made structures visible from space. But one aspect of this giant undertaking has fundamental consequences for every Chinese person, a loss that is irreplaceable.
One of the most devastating impacts in China for the politics of the project have been the destruction of the antiquities. The Chinese take great pride in the antiquities that have been discovered and that are in the path of the dam. And it is impossible for archaeologists to save all of the sites. And there is a growing concern that we will be destroying valuable historical artifacts that are fundamentally important to the Chinese people. I mean, if they're 100 feet below the surface of a large lake, it's very difficult to go down and see them. I think the loss of those antiquities affects the Chinese psyche. It affects the soul of China. And that is going to diminish support for the dam. People begin to say, now why is it we're doing this? Why is it we're destroying part of our heritage? And if the answer is just to provide flood control to a small portion of the country, people in the rest of the country say, this doesn't make any sense. And common sense usually wins.
The dam promises prosperity and a catapulting of a great nation into the future, as well as providing protection from the floods that have caused death and destruction since man first walked on the shores of the Yangtze. But what is for certain is the soul and spirit of China will survive. The river that has been called the Great Dragon, since stories have been told around village fires, will not easily be tamed. But if, as the Chinese people believe with a passion that can never be underestimated, the dam is successful, then a great nation will have truly built a wonder for the next millennium. A spectacular modern monument to man's ingenuity.